In post-World War II United States, we believed that the atrocities against the Jewish people would end. It encouraged people to fight for equality rather than continuing the barbaric discrimination of minority groups. Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel commented on the progression from racism in his Nobel Peace Prize speech by saying, "I swore never to be silent whenever and wherever human beings endured suffering and humiliation. We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere. When human lives are endangered, when human dignity is in jeopardy, national borders and sensitivities become irrelevant. Wherever men and women are persecuted because of their race, religion, or political views, that place must, at that moment, become the center of the universe." In 1977, after being denied the right to march in most other areas of Illinois, one branch of the neo-Nazis thought they had found a place to express their ideas. That place was Skokie, Illinois, a small suburb just outside of Chicago. Its population consisted of roughly 70,000 people, 40,000 of whom were Jewish, and 5,000 of whom were Holocaust survivors. After Skokie officials required the neo-Nazis to pay a $350,000 insurance bond in order to receive a permit to march, the Nazis decided to take this battle to court, citing that their First Amendment rights were being infringed upon. After a long, publicized court battle, it was eventually determined that the Nazis would be allowed to march, despite the citizens of Skokie claiming that it was a deliberate, emotional attack by the neo-Nazis, which would bring back harsh memories for those of the Jewish faith in Skokie. The neo-Nazi march in Skokie, Illinois, ultimately helped society because it strengthened the people's First Amendment rights, while also proving that a unified community is stronger than the hatred of hate groups like the neo-Nazis.
The conflict on First Amendment rights relating to the march in Skokie created a sense that hateful ideas like the ones the Nazis maintained were not welcomed. In accordance with the First Amendment, it is ultimately a positive that they were able to march because it protects a basic right of the people. If the government begins to restrict certain ideas from being expressed, then people will continue to demand that certain people and groups cannot express their ideas. It would set a very dangerous precedent. However, it was a very rigorous process for the neo-Nazis to ultimately be granted their right of free speech in Skokie. Decisions at lower court levels made it nearly impossible for the Nazis to actually march, as Skokie officials determined that the neo-Nazis would be forced to pay a $350,000 insurance bond in order to receive a permit to march, and also restricted the Nazis from displaying a swastika. The bond would eventually be overturned, but an absurd request of the Nazis like this hopefully pointed out to them and other hate groups that their ideas were unwanted. This ultimately worked, as the neo-Nazis, despite being granted the right to march, only formed a small gathering of about 20 people over a period of 10 minutes. During this time, they were drowned out by Jewish people and sympathizers. It seemed as though the neo-Nazis were scared off.
The potential neo-Nazi march posed an emotional threat to Jewish citizens of Skokie. As more hateful people rallied around the neo-Nazis, the Midwest Regional Director for the Anti-Defamation League, Richard Hershot, explained, "History has shown us that evil and hateful words, if unchecked, all too often lead to evil deeds and hate crimes. The 1970s was a huge step forward for minorities. Women, African Americans, Native Americans, gays and lesbians, and other groups fought for equality in America." This potential march reminded people all over America that this country was far from removing the discrimination against certain cultures, races, and religions. The idea of this march was a setback and a reminder of some of the cruel people that exist in the world. One of the main people behind this march was a man named Frank Collin, a regional leader for the neo-Nazis.
Your proposed march into Skokie has generated a lot of controversy here in Chicago, United States, and matter of fact, on an international scale.
Right.
Could you just outline the genesis of this march that you proposed?
Well, there's a theme or a slogan which we in the party have used as regards Skokie, and that is, "The path to Marquette Park leads through Skokie." The reason is since 1975, we have been banned from speaking in Marquette Park, where we have the greatest support amongst the white masses of the white working class and the white youth. We've also been banned from speaking in all of the northern suburbs of Illinois and all of the other parks throughout Chicago and much of the nation. The only way that we can seek to remedy this is through the courts, and we've been fighting in the courts for our right to free speech now for, well, since 1975, for 2.5 years, going on 3 years now, unsuccessfully.
Because Colin and other Nazis brought up the idea of the rally, it opened the doors for others to voice their racist opinions about Jews. It only created a more hostile environment for the Jewish people who were living there. Without Colin bringing up his ideas to the people in Marquette Park area and all over the country, these people likely would have never voiced their opinions. As the support grew, it only brought back the harshest memories for the Jewish people of Skokie. The sanctuary the Holocaust survivors thought they had achieved was in jeopardy. These hateful people brought these negative ideas to light. It motivated more people to rally together and voice their own ideas, different from those of the neo-Nazis.
The Skokie people, when faced with adversity, rallied together and united against the neo-Nazis, proving to the rest of the world that evil can always be overcome. People of all different cultures put away their differences and defended the Jewish Skokie residents. In fact, they even planned to take peaceful action against the neo-Nazi march. They intended on having a counter-march, but ultimately determined that the two marches would find each other and violence would ensue. Instead, they held a week-long vigil for human dignity and rights. Although the countermarch never came together, the fact that an idea like this was presented speaks to the strong bond the people of Skokie maintain, even in the face of struggle. The same idea can go along with the vigil. Both were peaceful and powerful ways of displaying their dissatisfaction with the way they were being treated. But the youth's unification would end up extending way beyond the small town of Skokie. President Jimmy Carter spoke on the topic by saying, "I must respect the decision of the Supreme Court, allowing this group to express their views, even when those views are despicable and ugly as they are in this case. But if such views must be expressed, I am pleased they will not go unanswered. That is why I want to voice my complete solidarity with those citizens of Skokie and Chicago who will gather Sunday in a peaceful demonstration of their abhorrence of Nazism." The fact that the President of the United States felt the need to comment displays the amount of support the Skokie residents had in uniting against the hate. By no stretch of the imagination were they on their own, because of the strong-willed people who revealed themselves as such an awful hate group arose to the surface. Although the Nazis may have won the battle in court, they were ultimately scared off of marching in Skokie because of the widespread and national support behind Skokie citizens. This provided an example to all people all around the world that whatever evil exists in the world, it can always be counteracted and overpowered by the good in the world.
Ultimately, society benefited from the neo-Nazi march in Skokie, Illinois, through the enhancement of the First Amendment, which encouraged through the unification of the community against the neo-Nazi hate groups. The conflict in Skokie, Illinois ultimately ended with a compromise with both the National Socialist Party and Holocaust survivors in order to reach a decision which both would agree upon. The emotional burden the Jewish Holocaust survivors endured during this time must have been atrocious, returning home from the evils faced in concentration camps or even living through the war only to find the same fate back home. A case like this is important for all people to know about. It serves as a reminder that accidents like this happened not too long ago, and prejudices like this still exist today.